Hello, good people. This is the IBM SPSS Chapter 11 video on how to do it in JASP. So, like we've done before, got to open some data. Since we're talking about Chapter 11, we'll open up the Chapter 11 data. And so, if you're following along in your book on the point and click method, it says to analyze, general literal model, univariate, that kind of stuff. None of those things are up here, but we are still doing an ANOVA. It's just a two-way between groups, independent groups ANOVA. So we go to the same places we did before. We go to the ANOVA, and we come up with these things. And so following along in your book, you got to make sure you understand the dependent variable. And so, you need to understand the situation, what we're talking about. So we're talking about, we have psychology students figuring out how long they can have a conversation with people. And we have them rated as being attractive or not so attractive, apparently. And then we got approach style. We got 3 different approach styles here. And we want to find, and we measured how long these two people spoke with each other. So that was time. So again, if you're following along with what your independent and dependent variables are, time is going to be our dependent variable. And again, if you look down to the fixed factors, which is similar to what IBM SPSS was going to want you to go into, got the same situation down here. We're looking for non-ratio, non-interval data here. We're only looking for ordinal or nominal, but attract and approach is labeled as such. So again, we got to go back over here and relabel our different style of data. Since we say attractiveness, we put it nominal, either attractive or not so attractive. And the same thing with the approach style. We have, what is it that we've got? The conversation, humor, and pickup line, different approaches. And so again, once we relabel them as nominal by groups, we come back over here. Now we can put these over into the fixed factors like the textbook is asking us. And then we get an interactive, an overall F table for our two-way ANOVA or factorial ANOVA here. So again, this is very similar to what you should be seeing in your textbook. It's that test of between subject effects F table, but there's still some more stuff we need. Always good to throw the descriptives there. So now we've got our different cell means. If you remember from chapter 13 in your textbook, we've got cells. So if we've got 2 different levels of one independent variable, attractiveness, and we've got 3 different levels of approach, that means we're going to have 6 cells. That means we're going to have 6 means, and that's what those means are. Again, always good to say the effect size index, but again, this is our overall F effect size, so it's not too helpful. What else do we need to know? We also need to know, we need some marginal means. And so what does that mean? If you remember, if we're looking at that matrix of our 6 cells, so if we've got, 2 on the horizontal and 3 on the vertical, so you've got 6 cells, you've got that matrix there, we can get our marginal means this way by just asking for them. So if we were going to have a marginal mean needed, we could see the average time for if you're attractive versus not is at 30 versus 22. Whereas if you're talking about the approach style, the conversation, humor versus pickup line, you can see the averages by that. So those are those marginal means that are, again, on the margins if you're doing a one-way ANOVA. So again, if you remember what you're supposed to be looking for in factorial ANOVA, you got to first look and see if you have a significant interaction. And again, the interaction up here is this attract times approach. That's the interaction. And if this is less than 0.5, then you stop looking at anything else and you just interpret the interaction. If this is not significant, then you take approach and attractiveness styles as one-way ANOVAs, very similar to the previous chapter. So if you look here, you're like, ooh, are all these less than 0.5? They all are, but that doesn't mean you interpret the main effects, you just interpret the interaction. If you didn't interpret the interaction, you need these marginal means to find out where the significant differences are. And so the last thing that I also kind of want you to have here it's kind of helpful for you to get pictures. So if you have an interaction, it's always easy to see the interaction visually in a picture. So let's look under descriptive plots here. And so what's kind of cool about this is that you can, if you start putting some of these things in here, we start getting pictures, which is kind of fun. So this is kind of this is the best picture that you could probably have. So you've got the 3 approach styles on the bottom. So on the horizontal, you've got the approach style. So you've got the one, which I think is conversation style, then humor, and then pickup line. And then you've got the attractiveness as the 2 different color dots. So you've got one, what is one? One attractive or not? One is attractive and 2 is unattractive. So now you can interpret the interaction, what's going on here, so that if you see somebody who uses the conversational style approach, this number 1, who is also attractive, that's where that number 1 is. And you can see that translates into the 1-1. We've got that 41.6. That's where this dot lies. And the same thing for if you are, let's say, if your approach style is still a number 1, but you're unattractive, you're number 2, so you've got 2 unattractive, 1 approach style, 18, that's where this black dot comes from. So this descriptive plot is just plotting the descriptives that are up here. And so that's how you want to talk about how to interpret an interaction. You need to interpret this picture. You could also interpret these descriptives here. So say on a quiz or something like that, you probably are going to want to say, all right, well, I can take these descriptives. If I've got the averages, I can make my own plot. I can draw my own plot. Or if you're in a software program, it'll let you draw it yourself, or you could ask for it to draw it as well. So I think these are the only outputs, analyses that I'm looking for this particular chapter. So again, make sure you click on all these things, you print it out, but you have to write the interpretation. You have to put it into words. So make sure you use the setup. We're talking about attractive versus non-attractive people. We're talking about approach style. We're talking about how long people talk to each other. So use all of that in your interpretation of what all this data says. Great. All right. Good luck. Later.